so much for joining us. I know this is very atypical, which is actually very typical for the year 2020. As we have found out, nothing has stayed the same this year. So we're trying to adapt and roll with it, and still want to do everything we can at the Chamber of Commerce to assist you all as members. So I think that you're going to find this presentation really informational and helpful. We also want to make it fun and thank Edward Jones for sponsoring today, Kyle Anderson. We really appreciate it. Kyle's been super involved with the Chamber. If you all remember, he won Ambassador of the Year. What was that, 2 years ago, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, 2 years ago. And I was really excited about that because Kyle's that person that is willing to step in and step up when needed. He's got a servant heart, and fortunately he also has a Melanie who keeps him all together and organized. So we are also very appreciative of her, but Kyle's also recently helped the Chamber with our retirement plan and being able to offer that to employees, and that's been a really great benefit for employees, and you made it really easy, Kyle, so thank you for that as well. All that to say, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you say a few things and then introduce our guest speaker today.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words there. And wow, what a crazy year it's been, not just with COVID, but in markets as well. We've seen the ups, we've seen the downs. It's been all over the place. So I wanted to bring our speaker in today to talk about the impact of COVID-19 with markets during an election year as well. So I want to introduce our speaker, Chad Dziezdic. He's a market leader that covers all of North Texas with BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest money manager in the world. They manage $7.3 trillion. They also perform risk management on over $22 trillion. It's a lot of money, and they do an excellent job at it. Chad has been in the business for over 20 years. I consider Chad a really good friend of mine, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say. So take it away, Chad.
Awesome. Kyle, I appreciate the opportunity to join everybody today, and you guys get those questions ready. I'll try to go through an update pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do first, we're going to look in the rearview mirror, and I'm going to go through some of the craziness that has happened this year. Okay. And then I'm going to get into looking through the windshield. What do we think about politics and investing, right? The election's around the corner. How do we think about that? Second thing, I'm going to talk about interest rates and inflation, right? We see interest rates at an all-time low. We've seen a lot of fiscal and monetary support, actually more than $6 trillion pumped into the economy this year. What does that look like with inflation? We'll talk about some of the biggest mistakes that we see investors making, or some of the challenges that we see investors making or facing. And then we may even, get into some of the best opportunities that are out there, things like that. So we'll go through that. I mean, how in the world can stocks go up when the economy is doing poorly? So I'm going to go through a lot of different things today quickly, and then hopefully there'll be some questions at the end, and I'll be glad to entertain those. So the first thing, let's recap the madness. Let's look in the rearview mirror and let's see where we've been before we talk about where we're headed. So in February, the market hit an all-time high, and unemployment was at an all-time low. And so we were in pretty good shape. And no one really saw what happened in March and so on happening to the degree that it did. So in March, we had the fastest 20% drawdown in the history of the stock market. You had the fastest 30% drawdown in the history of the market. The market was down 33% in 23 days. That has never happened in history, including the Great Depression. Okay, so if you think about that, we went from bull market to bear market, and now we're back in a bull market. That's the fastest that's ever happened in history. We have the lowest 10-year treasury ever. Most people don't realize bonds have been trading in the United States a lot longer than stocks. More than 200 years bonds have been trading. Interest rates right now have never been lower in the history of this country. We had the 10-year treasury get down to 0.52. Today it's at 0.7%. And if you factor in inflation, we basically have a negative interest rate in the United States. Mortgage rates are at an all-time low, right? Who would have ever thought we would have a 30-year mortgage and a 15-year mortgage under 3%? That's because of the stimulus and because of interest rates being so low. We have the highest unemployment rate that we've seen since the Great Depression in over 90 years. And now it's come back down under 10%, but just unbelievable how quickly that happened. Oil prices went negative. I'm from Texas. I'm from Houston. I grew up in oil country, right? My grandparents are from Corsicana, an old oil town. And to see oil prices go negative, I have to be honest with everybody. I've done this every day, all day for 21 years, and I didn't even know that was possible. I went to get my car filled up with gas. No one paid me to fill my car up with gas. So how do oil prices go negative? That happened this year, of course, in 2020. Air travel dropped by 95%. Most people don't realize the TSA screens about 2.5 million people per day when the economy is doing well. So take April 14th of 2019, the TSA screened about 2.3 million people. On April 14th of 2020, the TSA only screened 87,000 Americans going through TSA. Think about that. 2.2 to 2.5 million people per day, down to 87,000 people. Now, yesterday it was 800,000. So we are seeing some recovery. And then the other thing is we've all been quarantined at home or maybe just going to work for some part of this year, just about everybody in this country. And one of our very wise folks at BlackRock, who's been in the business almost 50 years, said, I thought you were supposed to quarantine sick people. I didn't know we quarantine healthy people. And so you put all of this together, it's a pretty crazy time. And so the first thing I'll transition to is, okay, so I went through all of that. If I told you that the market was near all-time highs, you would probably think I was crazy. Like there's no way the stock market could be near all-time highs when all those things you just said were happening, but it's true. So how do we make sense of that? The stock market acts like the windshield in your car, and the economy is like the dashboard in your car. Now don't do this, but imagine trying to drive your car down the highway, staring at your dashboard and not looking at the windshield. What's going to happen? You're going to wreck your car. Well, imagine staring at the economy, or even worse, listening to the media tell you how bad the economy is, which they're paid to scare you. If you listen to the media talk about the economy instead of paying attention to through the windshield, you're going to wreck your investments. And what's really sad, Kyle, is you've seen $5 trillion move into money market this year. So the market is near all-time highs, and we've had the best 50-day recovery ever in the stock market, the best 100-day period in the history of the market, and $5 trillion is sitting in cash. Because most people say that the two most dangerous things folks do in a crisis, they say the 5 most dangerous words of all time. This time it is different, right? This time is not different. Every economic scenario is different, but the stock market does the same thing over and over and over. And the sad thing is investors do the same thing over and over and over too. They run out of the market anytime there's a crisis. And so if you think about looking through the windshield for the market versus the dashboard, what happened is in March, the models were wrong. Our CEO, Larry Fink, was invited to Washington, D.C., met with senior leaders, President Trump, leaders from both political parties, the Treasury Secretary, the Federal Reserve President. All of these leaders come together and they bring the top doctors and scientists in the world together, and they say there's the possibility that 1 to 2 million people could lose their life to this virus by June 1st. Imagine the panic. Imagine the uncertainty. The economy in March was still doing fine. And that's why the market took a nosedive. The market doesn't wait for the economy to do poorly when you shut down the economy. The market prices it in before it happens. So there's 2 reasons we've seen such a strong recovery in the stock market where the economy is still lagging behind. Number 1, we got into April and May and we started to reopen the world's largest economy. And if you ever bet against American business, American consumers, American people, you will lose every single time. I think last Friday on September 11th, the 19-year anniversary, if you bet against this country, look how we recovered after that. Such a dark time in our country, and we rallied back like crazy. And I want to see our country do that again, because that was exciting to see how everybody rallied together as one country, not 2 political parties. And so the market looks at that and says, wow, the virus through the windshield, it didn't get near as bad as we thought. It's very serious. It's very contagious. If you're high risk, it's very dangerous. But on June 1st, about 100,000 people had lost their life, not 1 to 2 million. And so the market looks through the windshield and says, oh my goodness, we priced in that 1 to 2 million people were going to die. We priced in Armageddon. 87,000 people flew in an airplane because they were scared to get on an airplane. And now the market says, we think the economy is actually going to recover quicker than we think because the models were wrong and things didn't get as bad as we thought. That's the first reason the market started doing well. The second reason is simple math. And I'm going to walk you guys through this very slowly because when this was walked through to all of us at BlackRock by our senior leaders, I was like, that makes sense to me. So hopefully this makes it easy. Our economy in the US, our GDP, our gross domestic product, is about $20 trillion a year, okay? If you're not familiar with GDP, think about your own household. How much money do you bring in before any taxes or expenses? That would be your GDP for your household. What's your output? The US economy is 20 trillion. There are 4 quarters in the year, so that means we do roughly $5 trillion per quarter. Second quarter GDP was the worst in the history of the market, down 33%. So that means we did about $2 trillion of economic output, okay? Now, we got $6 trillion of stimulus. So Kyle, think about that. You have 2 trillion of economic output when we should have done 5, and then you stack 6 trillion on top of the 2 trillion, that's 8 trillion. So you're telling me, and this is what the market figured out, you're telling me in a quarter that would have done 5 trillion if everything was perfect this year, we got 8 trillion between the production we did get and the 6 trillion of stimulus? Think about that. The market looks through the windshield and says, oh my goodness, things didn't get as bad as we thought, and you guys pumped $6 trillion into the economy? What do you think is going to happen later this year? And you need to understand that the economy warms up like your car in the wintertime. So if I go out to fire up my car, and I used to do this when I was 16 because I was clueless, and I bet others on the call did the same thing. You go out, it's freezing cold. You get in your car, it's actually colder in your car than it is outside. You crank the car up, you turn the heater as hot as it'll get, and crank the fan up to high, and what happens? Does it warm you up right away? No, it blows freezing cold air on you. It makes you colder, and it takes a while to warm up. So that's the problem. When you pump stimulus into the economy, it takes time for that to warm up. But the stock market is looking through the windshield saying, when it warms up, look out. And Kyle, you're going to get third quarter GDP of 15 to 20% positive. Fourth quarter GDP, it could be 20%. If it's not the fourth quarter, it'll be the first quarter of next year. When you get a vaccine, when you get better therapeutics that can reduce the death rate even farther, when we get more educated about this virus, you're going to see the economy take off. And so this time is not different, right? Yes, the economic scenario is different. The market did the same thing. So the mistake people make is they say, Kyle, I'm going to wait until the economy improves until I invest. That's the other mistake, right? I told you the 5 most dangerous words people say, this time it is different. The second thing they say is, I'm going to wait until things improve, Kyle. When the economy gets better, I'll be ready to invest. Well, the problem is the market left you behind. Okay, and so when you get this really good GDP, is the market immediately going to go up? No, the market's going to look forward and say, tell me about the vaccine. Tell me, is it working? Are people taking it? Tell me about the therapeutics, which are actually more important than the vaccine. Okay, so think about the stock market like the windshield in your car, and the economy is like the dashboard in your car. That will help you understand how to always look ahead. That's the way to be a successful investor. If you wait for the economy, you're always going to miss the best opportunities. And the media loves to scare you. That's what they're paid to do. And that's why there's $5 trillion sitting on the sidelines today, which is heartbreaking to see folks not on track to reach their goals, sitting in cash, making zero when the market has done well because of the recovery. So that's the first thing I wanted to address. Now, a topic that comes up every single day, when you have $5 trillion on the sidelines sitting in money market making nothing, folks want to know, Kyle, where are interest rates going to go? When are they going to go back up, man? When am I going to get my CD paying me 2 or 3 or 4%? It's going to be a long time, folks. We have a structural debt problem. This has nothing to do with politics. This is a debt problem. In 1981, I bet there's folks on this call that will remember in 1981, the 10-year treasury hit the all-time high of 15.8%. You could get CDs paying 18%. Do you know what our debt was at that time? 1 trillion. Last February, our debt was 22 trillion. Now it's almost 27 trillion. Congress is bickering about 1 to 3 trillion of additional stimulus. Democrats want 3 trillion, Republicans want 1 trillion. So by the end of the year, you're looking at probably $30 trillion in federal debt. So when debt is that high and your GDP is 20 trillion, I want you to think about your friends, relatives, neighbors, coworkers, maybe someone that makes a lot of money, but they have every toy you can imagine. They spend more than they make. So they make 100 grand and they spend 200 grand. That's the US, right? That's what we do. And so if you need to pay off that debt, you get rid of all the toys, and what do? You spend less than you make, which we need to do. But the other thing you could do is, what if you could make a deal with the credit card companies or someone and say, hey, could you give me 0% interest rates? Think about if your credit card debt was 20% versus 0. Wouldn't it be easier to pay off the debt? Well, here's the deal. You don't get to do that with a credit card company, right? Do you know who gets to do that though? The Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has a little magic wand and they get to do whatever they want with interest rates. And they're going to keep interest rates low for a very, 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 very long time. We cannot let interest rates go higher. They will manipulate interest rates to be low because we can't afford it. So everybody needs to understand that you have to be careful sitting in cash for a long period of time, because it is likely that the front of the yield curve, the 3-month T-bill, the Fed funds rate, the things that dictate CD rates, money market rates, savings account rates, checking account rates, that is likely to be 0, maybe all the way to 2025, okay? So extremely low rates. And so you have to be careful. You want to have a great emergency fund. You don't want to have too much money in cash. Okay, so interest rates are going to stay low for a long period of time. Now, where's one of the really good opportunities out there? Folks that are sitting in cash are worried about the pandemic, or they're worried about the election. So if you're worried about the election, what do you think could happen with taxes if you're worried about the election? They could go up. When you have this level of debt, where are taxes likely to go? So one of the investments that we like right now for safer money, where you're not going into equities, but getting more than a CD or a money market, would be tax-free bonds, right? If taxes are likely to go higher because of our debt issues, and they're going to keep interest rates low, what we figured out, Kyle, we're actually helping the Federal Reserve. If you read about it, BlackRock has been retained by the Federal Reserve to help with the asset purchase program. They are buying treasuries. They are buying agencies. They are buying mortgages. They are buying corporate bonds. They even started buying junk bonds, below investment grade bonds. Do you know what they can't own by law, though, on their balance sheet? Tax-free bonds. So there are definitely some credit issues with municipalities that could fail. So you have to be careful what you're investing in. But if you own high quality issues, you're likely going to get a lot more income in tax-free bonds than you are other asset classes. And when everybody else gets worried about taxes in the future, guess what they're going to want to own? Tax-free bonds. And so we always say investing is the only business in the world that when everything goes on sale, everybody runs out of the store for some reason. So tax-free bonds went on sale. And we are the largest tax-free manager in the world. We manage over $200 billion in tax-free bonds. We bought a lot of tax-free bonds for our clients. And that's because we're getting better yields, and we think tax rates will eventually have to go higher. So that would be an idea with low interest rates for folks to think about. Talk to Kyle. He can help you with that. But that would be something to think about from a low interest rate perspective. Let's talk briefly about inflation, okay? This one's going to be a little tricky. We're not going to have hyperinflation. That's the short answer. The next 3 to 5 to 10 years, we are unlikely to have hyperinflation. But in the next 6 to 12 months, you are likely to see a pretty good spike in inflation. And so I want to warn everyone, because I don't want you to be concerned. The media is going to have a field day telling you, there it is. I told you, you print a bunch of money. There's hyperinflation. Let me explain this. When GDP is negative 33% and then rebounds to 15 or 20% positive and then 20 or 25% positive, 2 of the best quarters of all time, when growth goes up like that, what do you think inflation is going to do in the short term? It's going to spike with it. So you could easily see inflation for a quarter or two go to 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7%. So when you see that spike, what do you think? Everybody's going to start yelling. Hyperinflation, told you can't print this kind of, see what happened? Look at the hyperinflation. Folks, that's going to be like a sugar high. Okay? I have a 9 and a 6-year-old. If my wife's not looking and I give them a huge bag of candy and say, Kinsey, KJ, I want you to eat this huge bag of candy. Right? It'll be fun for a couple hours. We'll have a good time. They'll go nuts. And then my stuff will be in the front yard because my wife's going to be angry and they're going to crash. Okay. Well, that's what's going to happen. You're going to see this sugar high in growth, this sugar high in inflation. The Fed is not going to raise rates because of that, because they know that's not hyperinflation. And then next year, guess what? The growth comes back down. The inflation follows the growth back down, and you don't have hyperinflation. So I want to warn everybody, because if I just said, no, there's not going to be hyperinflation, folks would think, well, Kyle, what'd you have this guy on for? Look at this inflation at 5 or 6%. That is likely to happen in the short term. But over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, why are we not likely to have higher inflation or significantly higher inflation? Demographic trends and technology. So think about this. When you wake up in 10 years in the United States, you're going to have almost 100 million Americans 60 years old or older. So think about this. When you're in your 20s, you don't spend a lot of money because you don't have any money. And then you get better jobs and you decide to get married and you have a family and you buy a bigger house and then a bigger car. And then you need a bigger house and a bigger car. And then they start playing sporting events and traveling and you take vacations and trips and the company in Florida or California where kids go crazy to go there, and you spend a lot of money. You spend a lot of money in your 30s, 40s, and 50s as your family ages. And then when your kids leave the nest and you get into your 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, what do you do with your lifestyle? You downsize your home, you downsize your cars, you downsize your life. So think about the multiplying effect with 100 million people doing that at the same time. Now don't stop at the US, think about Europe. Europe is older than the US. Japan is even older than Europe. Japan is the oldest nation in the world. They sold more adult diapers in 2019 than baby diapers for the first year ever. They are aging, okay? They have more nursing homes than elementary schools in Japan. So when the developed world is aging, and that's where most of the money is, that is deflationary. So that helps keep a lid on inflation. But what's 10 times greater in multiplying effect than demographic trends is technology. This little device didn't exist in 2007. When this little device came out, I want you to think about how your life has changed. How many of you used to have a GPS system and you would mount it up on your dash, right? You mount your GPS system and plug it into the cigarette lighter and you would type in the address of where you're gonna go and it showed you how to get there. Or you had a map, one of those dinosaurs in your glove box, right? Or you're getting ready to go to bed and you set your alarm clock next to your bed. Or the lights go out and you look for your small flashlight, but you click on it and it doesn't work because the batteries are corroded because you haven't used it in a long time, didn't even know where it was. Do you know what you do now? There's a flashlight on your phone. There's an alarm clock on your phone. There's a GPS system on your phone, okay? How many used to buy Polaroid cameras, digital cameras, movie cameras to hang on your shoulder and record your family? Now you click on a button on your phone, you have one of the best cameras in the world on your phone. How many used to buy albums for 20 bucks or CDs for $15 for a one-hit wonder? Somebody that had one good song and you had to buy the whole album. So frustrating. Right? That's why I like George Strait, because every song is good. But now you can create your own personal library, right? You create your own library on your phone. I can have my own music library. My daughter can have hers. My son has his, right? And you don't have to pay $15 for the album. You buy each song individually. You create a library. The reason I'm going through this, somebody tell me how the map business is doing these days. Tell me how the GPS business is growing. Do you know that alarm clock sales are down 90% in the last 5 years because of your phone? Do you know small flashlight sales are down 80%? So while this is a convenient device that makes us more productive, do you know what it is? It's destructive. It destroys people's jobs. It destroys industries and sectors. The map business won't even exist anymore because of technology. And it's not going to slow down. 5G is 100 times faster than 4G. So when you hear them talking about that, you're going from a 2-lane dirt highway to a 50-lane superhighway, okay? So technology is not going to slow down. It's going to speed up. Technology is deflationary. Folks, we're not going to have hyperinflation. So if you hear anybody try to scare you about hyperinflation and they don't talk about demographic trends or technology, they're not telling the full story, okay? And then if I'm completely wrong, well, guess what the worst thing is you can do if you're worried about inflation? Sit in cash. What's the best thing you could do? Own stocks. Stocks are the best fighter of inflation, okay? So that's how we think about inflation. Now, let's go to the election, because I don't want you guys to think I'm avoiding it. I know that's probably where I should have just started. Most calls like, don't even talk about anything else, just talk about the election. I want you to understand this. So let's go back to 1896. William McKinley was elected president, the 25th president of the United States, okay? There have been 18 Democrats and 13 Republicans since 1896. And if you had $10,000 in 1896 and you invested that money and you just invested the whole time, regardless of Democrat or Republican, you would have $7 million, okay? That's awesome. That's not even the point. Don't worry about that. What if you would have only invested when your political party would have been in office? Because you felt better, you liked the policies, you were more confident in the economy because of who was in the office. If you put that 10 grand under those 18 Democrat presidents, it's worth $500,000 today. And if you put that 10 grand and only invested when Republicans were in office, you would have about $400,000, okay? The point is, you do not mix politics and investing. The policies are really important. They should be debated. It is important to our country. But when it comes over to your portfolio, you need to leave that stuff over here because politics don't go with investing. You think companies are going to care who is in the office? You're telling me that all this technology, this innovation revolution, 5G, artificial intelligence, robotics, cybersecurity, big data, you're telling me all those companies that can make millions and millions, if not trillions of dollars in the next 10 years, they're just going to say, you know what, Kyle? I don't really like who won the election, so let's just put all of that on hold. Forget the innovation, man. I'm just going to sit on this technology that I know is going to help the world. Or, you know what, Kyle? Everybody's just going to stop aging and spending money on healthcare if President Biden wins the election. How silly is that? That is silly, right? How much money was left on the table in 2008? Let's bring it to today, because when I said 1896, people are probably like, what in the world? This guy's talking about 1896. All right, let's talk about today. What about 2008 when President Obama was elected? How many people said, you know what, Kyle? I don't agree with his policies. I think socialism is going to take over. I don't like Obamacare. I'm out. I'm not investing. And you look smart for a few months because we were in the midst of the Great Recession. And so you thought, well, this is because of President Obama. This thing got worse because of him. No. The market bottomed in March of 2009 for no reason and then proceeded to go up 350% under President Obama. And do you know which sector everybody was worried about the most under President Obama? Healthcare. Do you know what sector made over 15% per year during the 8 years that President Obama was in office? Healthcare. Did it have anything to do with policy? No. You know why healthcare made money? Because people are aging and people are spending more money on healthcare than ever before, and it's going to continue to increase. So if you're telling me you're not going to invest in technology and healthcare because of who wins the presidency, that's silly. That's silly, and you're making a huge mistake. Do not let politics affect your investing, okay? So the last thing I'll finish with are what are the biggest mistakes that we see being made today? We're the largest money manager in the world. I love looking every morning at where money came in, where money went out, every single day. I get to see it. We get to see. Imagine the billions and billions of dollars we see go in and out every day into different things. So what are the two things we're seeing people do that they should not do this year that I really want to help everybody with? Number one is the cash. There's too much cash on the sidelines. $5 trillion? Our country's going to go broke. People are going to go broke in retirement if they have all this money sitting in cash making zero. When I told you interest rates are going to stay low, inflation is going to go back up to 2 or 3%. It's running under 2% right now. So if you're sitting there making zero, you're actually losing 2 to 3% every year with inflation. Okay? So what's the biggest mistake? People sit on cash. Now think about it. If I'm driving down the road and I've got 4 tires on my car and 1 spare tire, that spare tire is for an emergency. So I have an emergency. I have a flat tire. I pull over, I put my little donut on my car, and I'm going to drive over to Discount Tire. I'm going to drive over to the local tire shop, and they're going to help me out. Okay? And do you think I'm going to tell them, hey, I got that little donut out there on my car. I need a new tire. But you know what? I did a little math on the way over here, and I'm pretty concerned. I'm pretty scared. I realized I have 4 tires, but I only have 1 spare. Could you sell me 4 spare tires? Because that would make me feel more comfortable when I drive around. How many goofs do you see driving around Graham with 4 spare tires in the back of their truck? How many people do you see driving around with 4 spare tires in the back of their trunk? It would be safer, right? No one does that because it doesn't work. You couldn't put your family in the car. You couldn't use your truck appropriately for what you bought the truck for. You couldn't go to the airport with your luggage in the car. You couldn't take a long road trip with your family because the whole car is full of spare tires to make you feel safe. Well, that's what people do today with their portfolio. You need an emergency fund. You need a spare tire. The rest of the money needs to be invested to help you reach your goals, your long-term goals. And Kyle, that takes me to the other side of it. The other thing folks do is they invest their money and say, hey, here's 100 grand, here's 10 grand, here's 5 grand. Hey, Kyle, pick some good stocks or invest this money. Well, you end up taking too much risk. Or you compare yourself to your brother-in-law or your uncle or a coworker that's making more money. Hey, Kyle, I realize my coworker is making more than me in my 401k. I need you to take more risk. Well, that's the same coworker that goes to the casino and doesn't tell you when they lose, or they tell you about their winners. They don't tell you about the losers, right? So your uncle brags at Thanksgiving about his portfolio, but he doesn't tell you what he lost in 2008. He doesn't tell you how much risk he's taking. Or even worse, Kyle, people compare themselves and their portfolio to the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones. Kyle, when is the NASDAQ going to retire? When is the S&P 500 going to put some kids or grandkids through college? When is the Dow Jones Industrial Average going to stroke a check to your favorite charity, church, nonprofit? Never. So why are you comparing yourself to something that doesn't matter? Here's the key to investing for everybody, and I want to finish with this. The key is figuring out what are your long-term goals? And then how little risk can Kyle take to get you to those goals? That's the key. That's the key. It's not about bragging to your friends and neighbors about your portfolio. They may have different goals. How little risk can you take to get to that goal? We always say roller coasters are for your grandkids. They're not for your retirement portfolio, right? So be careful how much risk you're taking. The worst risk you can take is the risk you don't know you're taking. So if you're sitting on a bunch of cash and you feel safe, you're not safe. That's like 4 spare tires in your car. And if you're taking a bunch of risk and bragging about your performance on your portfolio, well, what if it went down 40, 50, 60, 70, 80%? The NASDAQ went down 80% in the tech bubble. Do you know what it takes to get 80% back when you lose it? 400%. If you lose 80% and you make 80%, you are way underwater. You need 400% return to get your money back. See, the most exciting thing for me, and this will show you, like, hey, BlackRock, we say we're going to bore you to wealth. This will probably bore everybody on the call, but think about the arithmetic of loss. If I have $100,000 and I lose 50%, I only have $50,000. If I make 50%, I'm not back to even. I only have $75,000. Okay? I would need to make 100% to get my money back to even. But here's what's amazing. If 50 equals 100, think back to high school math. If 50 equals 100, what should 10 equal? If you lose 10%, you would think you would need to make 20% to get your money back. That's not true. If you lose 10%, you only need 11%. That's the key to investing. If you take less risk and you're on track to reach your goals, and you lose 10%, now you only have to make 11%. But if you are playing around with stuff you shouldn't be playing around with that you don't understand, and you lose 30, 40, 50, 60%, you better understand the arithmetic of loss. If you lose 30%, you need 43%. If you lose 40%, you need 67%. If you lose 80%, you need 400%. If you lost 90% in the Dow Jones and the Great Depression, you needed 900% to get your money back. Don't invest your money unless you understand the arithmetic of loss, okay? Very important, and that's something Kyle and I partner together to do. So I'm extremely grateful for you guys trusting me and having me on the call today. The last thing I would say is help your local community, right? Shop local. Take care of your local community. It's so important for you to rally together as a community at a time like this, right? It's so important for these small business owners. That is the fabric of our country. There's been way too much focus on these big companies, and we want to make sure that you're helping your local economy because that's the backbone of our country, okay? So I want to finish with that and just, thank you guys for having me on the call. We'll open it up and see if there's any questions.
Chad, thank you so much for that. Extremely informational. And I think I can say this safely for myself and maybe speaking for some of the others as well on the call, but it makes me feel very confident in my decision to work with Kyle for, our chamber related business, but also personally, because some of the key points you were making, and really, I think you said something along the lines of, if you don't understand it, then you really shouldn't be doing it. You should be working with somebody who does understand it. And that's why it's so important to go to someone like Kyle, who does understand it. And I can speak my personal, testimony there is that when we set up our personal accounts, and I said, yeah, Kyle, I need to trust you. I do trust you, and I need to trust you with this because you know so much more about it than I do. And we talked through, risk level, comfort, and some of those key things, but it's made it so easy for us. And I want to touch on what you said at the very end about taking care of each other in your local community. This is also an opportunity to work with someone locally when you're looking at your investments. And when you do that, you have somebody you can trust and somebody somebody that your kids play sports with their kids, and maybe you attend church with them, or you run into them at the supermarket, whatever it may be, but you have that level of comfort and trust knowing you're working with someone who cares about you and cares about your future. So I want to see, I know we had some comments, but I'm asking right now, does anybody have any questions? You can just put it in that chat. Looks like a lot of great compliments, Chad, to you and your presentation and the material.
So
Really timely and relevant material. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll open it up with a question while people are going in and typing in their questions. You touched on it earlier there, Chad, and we are in Texas. Graham is a big oil community. Just talk a little bit about, just real quick, in depth, as far as energy. Where do we see energy going? Just talk a little bit about energy markets there while people are typing in their questions.
Yeah, so energy had a really, really tough time, and it turned into a supply story when it should not have. And this is the problem with the way the oil business is run. I mean, thank goodness that the U.S. is such a big producer now, or we would be at even more of the mercy of OPEC. But OPEC did not cut supply. I mean, you shut down China's economy in February, and then the U.S. in April and May, and you don't cut supply. Like, that was just so everybody understands the malicious behavior going on behind the scenes with this whole deal. This was all about Saudi Arabia and Russia and Iran and Venezuela trying to bankrupt some of the shale producers, because that is their biggest threat long term. And so understanding the math behind it, Saudi Arabia needs oil at $75 to $80 a barrel to run their economy long term. Russia needs oil at $50 a barrel to run their economy long term. And so they were willing to make their own people suffer dramatically in the short term to try to bankrupt some of the shale producers to make it easier for them to have control long term. One of the best things we did was become energy independent. And so that definitely helped. It could have been a lot worse, Kyle. But those TSA numbers that I give you, and that's public data, by the way, we analyze that every single day. I would encourage people to do that if you want a good pulse on the economy. On April 14th of last year, 2.3 million people were screened by the TSA. April 14th of this year was 87,000. Now it's 800,000 to 900,000 people a day. That's why oil prices have recovered. Is the oil prices are recovering because demand is picking up. So the last component of this, Kyle, for oil to go back to $50 or $60 a barrel, which we think it will do in the next couple of years, is you need to see states like California and Illinois, some of the bigger states, reopen and actually get back to business. That's a huge detractor. The other thing is travel and leisure. I think when you see a vaccine, you see better therapies. And I said it during the call, therapeutics are actually more important than the actual vaccine. Okay. The therapeutics that are coming are pretty exciting. And I think it's going to be just amazing what we see coming in therapeutics, which will help reduce the inflammation in the virus. And when folks feel more confident that they're not going to get sick or die from this virus, they're going to be more likely to move out and about. And when people move out and about, think about it. We've all been trapped in this little bitty circle for the last 6 months. How many sporting events have you been to? Concerts, weddings, big funerals, right? Family reunions this summer, big international vacations. How many flights have you been on? How many cruise ships have you been on? So we're all trapped at home. You know when this happened? After September 11th. We didn't want to congregate around a lot of other people. So when you don't congregate around a lot of other people, 70% of our economy comes from consumption. So we're not consuming. And when you're not consuming and you're not leaving your home, or maybe you're just going to work, but you're not doing other things, you don't drive as much, you don't fly as much, you don't cruise as much, you don't use boats as much. And so that's why oil prices are at $35 to $40 and are likely to stay there. The last leg you need to see is the travel and leisure business pick up. And that's people feeling confident to get out and about. Because when we all leave that little bitty circle, you're not going to ride your bike or walk. You're going to drive, you're going to fly, you're going to cruise. And just like no one thought we would ever get back to normal after September 11th, we will. The TSA came in, which we didn't even used to be able to walk right up to the gate and wave bye to your family. See you later. I'll see you next time. Now it's like all this but now you feel safe to fly because of those things that are in place. The same thing is going to happen with this virus. We're going to put measures in place to make you feel more comfortable to move out and about, which will drive our economy and send oil prices higher. Okay. So you are likely to see in the next 6 to 12 months when GDP goes to 15 or 20% and fourth quarter goes to 20%, and next year should be a pretty strong year, you're going to see oil prices come back up. Now, long term, you have to understand, if I'm being completely truthful with everybody, long term, there are some major structural problems with fossil fuels going back to 60, 70, $80 a barrel and staying there for a long time. You had 5 electric car commercials during the Super Bowl. Technology is going to improve. Batteries, you're going to be able to drive hundreds and hundreds of miles on one charge. 18-wheelers are going to be able to go across the country with battery technology. There are going to be changes coming, and that is going to hurt. But when you get a recession like this, Kyle, it flushes out the bad behaviors. There are companies that shouldn't have been in business. There were companies that didn't know how to run a balance sheet, that were, just blowing cash, burning cash. And those companies are no longer going to be in business. So the companies that are there are going to do really well over the next 3 to 5 years. But the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be some structural headwinds from clean energy and battery technology and ESG, right? Environmental, social, and governance that's happening in Europe and Japan that will come here eventually. And that is a political issue, right? So that is oil is a sector that will be affected by who wins the election. So the overall market will not, but there are certain sectors like energy that can be affected by what happens with politics.
Krista, were there any other questions that have come through?
I was just going to say, Chad, you're speaking to my heart a little bit because half of my job is also tourism. And so, it's been tough on the tourism industry overall, of course, when, like you said, flights, hotel stays, all of that have been drastically reduced. But then at the same time, of course, the other half of my position here is commerce. And we've actually seen an increase each month so far in sales tax, and pretty drastic increase even in sales tax overall. And I thought that was really interesting because, what I have surmised, and this isn't necessarily accurate, it's my own assumption, conclusion, but is that with people staying home more, our local residents are spending their money at home more. And so since we haven't been able to travel, we've actually seen more money spent locally here than we had previously. So it's a little pull and tug for me because, of course, as far as tourism goes, we need that. It's important to our economy overall. But of course, it's also nice to see that sales tax ramp up a little bit with people spending their money here in Graham instead of going out of town to spend money. But anyway, so I just related a lot, even though you were speaking specifically to the oil and gas industry, it applies overall, really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? And Kyle, I think you had mentioned that if people do have questions after the fact, or if they don't feel comfortable asking in the group, that you're okay with them calling your office also. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
If not, it's going to be really awkward if you say no right now.
No, absolutely. You can call our office. We're over here, 452 Oak Street. We're next to Municipal Court. You can call us 940-549-5192, and or just stop by. We can get an appointment on the calendar, and we can sit down and visit with you.
So next time you're out paying for one of your speeding tickets, just pop on over to Edward Jones, Kyle Anderson's office.
Come on.
And ask all your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we do, we sit down, as you alluded to earlier, Carissa, is we're going to talk to you about your comfort level with risk, how much risk you're willing to take in the market. I get the question a lot whenever we're going over that, our risk tolerance questionnaire is, well, you tell me. And I can't tell you how you feel. I can't tell you how you feel about your comfort level in taking risks. We're going to talk about your life stage, where you're at in your life, and then we're going to put a plan together. Because if you're, as Chad was talking about, the old roadmap, now GPS, your iPhone, Android, if you say, hey, we're gonna go on a trip to Arkansas, or we're going to wherever, Colorado, and you hop in the car and you just take off driving, you don't know where your end destination is without looking at your GPS, without looking at your phone, or even if you're a map person, pulling out the old map. And so that's what we do, is we take a look at where you're at right now. We take a look at where you want to go, what you want to accomplish, and then we kind of fill in that gap and help you fill out that roadmap of how to get you to your financial goals.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes, Kyle, you and I talked about this a lot when we were getting our account set up, but I wasn't really sure what the goal should be, and so we talked a lot about that, like where, what is the goal? I'm not even, and you helped me, you helped us walk through that and figure out really where to set our goals in the first place, because that's an important question, but sometimes, and I think oftentimes I'll even say, I think a lot of people think they know where their goals need to be to live the lifestyle they're wanting to live and do the things they're wanting to do. And maybe those don't always make sense.
Well, that's what we're here for. So give us a call, stop by and see us. We'll get an appointment set for you, and be glad to help anybody out there that needs help.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Kyle and Chad, you're both getting a lot of great compliments in the chat. I hope you all can see those as well. But and Stephanie asked, what are certifications or qualities to look for in a financial planner? Great question. Do you want to answer, Kyle, or you want Chad to?
I'll let Kyle take that one.
Yeah. So as far as the qualities go, I would say just having a personal relationship with your financial advisor. Chad was talking about technology, and technology is great. And we use a lot of technology here in our office, but sometimes that personal relationship can't be replaced by technology. And sitting across the table, sitting right next to your financial advisor that can truly understand where you want to go, what you want to accomplish, what does retirement look like for you. And a lot of times plugging that into a computer, you don't really get that relationship. You don't get that feeling that we can provide here in our office. And so that would be a quality that I would say when looking for a financial advisor. Obviously, you want somebody that you can trust. I mean, you're trusting somebody with your financial future, with your retirement or your kids' education or whatever it may be. So I would say find somebody that you can put your full trust into, and that's going to listen to you and listen to you in confidence. And so I would say those are qualities and things to look for in a financial advisor.
I totally agree with that. And we got another great question, Kyle, related to when to start working with a financial planner. And is there a point where, it's too late? Essentially, you get to an age where it's too late, you've missed the boat, or can you start whenever that stage of life is that you're in?
So I would say, as far as putting a plan together, always know where you want to end up, because whenever you put that plan together and you don't know where you want to end up, you're just kind of roaming about. And so I would say it's never too early to start planning, and we can sit down and start talking to you about where do we need to go. And so, and then we can say, all right, well, where are we at right now? And then we can, again, that roadmap, we can figure out how much do we need to be adding either monthly or annually, and figure out where it is we need to be heading on an annual basis there. And that's why we sit down with our clients minimum once a year, and we're going to go over, has anything changed? Has your risk changed? Has your goals changed? And if that has, we need to reflect that in your plan.
And what about like if you're already approaching or near or at retirement age? Can you still work with those individuals?
Absolutely. We talk to a lot of people that their whole life they've been putting money into a pension, been putting money into a 401k, and those avenues are great. But at that point where we say, all right, now we're going to go from we're putting in to taking out. So at that point, we're going to try to figure out an income plan. how much, whenever we talk about Social Security, that's one thing Chad and I work on very closely together as well. There's a lot of people in Graham that have seen him do a Social Security seminar, and we go in and we plug in, how are we going to maximize your Social Security with you and your spouse? And then how can we supplement that with income from the assets that you currently have? Is it a pension? Is it a 401k? We're going to figure out, as far as taxes go, how are we going to do that? We're going to work closely with your CPA to make sure we're helping you make the best financial decision financially, but also from a tax planning perspective as well.
Awesome. And Janine had a couple of good questions. What are the charges for a financial planner? And then also, do you work with government employees?
We work with everybody. And as far as the charges and all of that goes, I would just say, because there's not one straight charge, I would say the best thing to do, give us a call, come sit down with us, and we can talk about your personal situation.
So I know that you are personally passionate about the field of education. Do you work with many teachers and educators?
Absolutely. I work with all of them, my wife being one of them. And so, yes, we work with those because even though you've got TRS, you may have a spouse that doesn't have TRS. And we put that plan together so we know how much we can estimate how much you're getting off of TRS and your spouse, plus also, planning out how do we need to take your spouse's Social Security versus TRS. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. And so absolutely, just because you're a teacher that may just be putting into TRS, that doesn't mean that you don't need a plan put together for you.
Okay, and one more question, Kyle, I'm sorry, I know you may need to go, but what about if somebody is already working with a financial planner? Is it possible to switch that over to you?
Absolutely. And so what we typically do is we want to sit down and we want to get to know your situation. And we want to get to know where you're going to be heading. We want to know your goals. We want to understand your full out situation. And then we want you to make the decision, do you want to work with us? And if that is the case, that you do want to work with us, then we can fill out the paperwork that just transfers that stuff to an Edward Jones account that you'll open up here. So absolutely, that's possible to, whether it's another firm or a bank or whatever, it's a simple transfer process.
Well, and if you all are like me, you're probably going to, continue to digest some of this and think it through. So as other questions arise, or if I didn't get to everyone's question, feel free to give Kyle a call. He's easy to talk to, and he'd be happy to answer some more of those questions. But Kyle, again, thank you for sponsoring the luncheon. Thank you for your involvement and support of the Graham Chamber of Commerce. And Chad had to jump off, but please let him know how appreciative we are as well. That was excellent information.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everyone, and have fun spending your chamber dollars.